This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
Brought to you by the Capital One Saver Card. With Saver, you earn unlimited cashback for going out or staying in. That's unlimited 4% cashback on dining, at a restaurant, or on takeout at home. 4% back on entertainment from the front row of a game or on popular streaming from your couch. And 3% back at grocery stores, where you'll find everything you need to make the meals that make their day. So earn unlimited cashback with the Capital One Saver Card. Capital One, what's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Hello, I'm Mark Chapman. Before you get stuck into the latest Football Daily, I want to tell you that the Daily Euros is coming. From June, the Football Daily podcast is changing as we turn our full attention to the international stage. It'll be your daily dose of Euros analysis, debate and news as we bring you all the action with some of the biggest names in the game. We'll have reporters inside all the home nations' camps bringing you interviews with the players, coaches and managers throughout the tournament. So join us and get ready for the Euros like no other on the Daily Euros. Listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
On the Football Daily Podcast, this is the Monday Night Club with Mark Chapman.
So, the Monday Night Club then this evening with Rory Smith, Micah Richards and Neda Manua. Chris Sutton spent the weekend in Portugal with John Murray, part of our commentary team, and John is still methodically working his way out of the multi-storey car park in Porto, and Chris is still with him. I don't know about you, Rory. These two look like they'd rather be anywhere else at the moment.
I mean, certainly Nedum should be kind of crediting himself, because I think he was in Porto too, weren't you?
Yes, I was actually, and take this however you want, but I was in a room with Chris Sutton as well.
There you go. It's a miracle he's made it.
Hence why you're looking so miserable at the moment ahead of having to play the Sutton role.
No.
But Chappers, I was in Porto. Nedum was in Porto.
Yeah.
What's Chris's excuse?
I tell you, John Murray's giving him a lift, and John is a very methodical driver, I'm telling you. And Micah, you look like you'd rather be anywhere else as well.
No, I have to remain professional. And
that's a first time for everything.
I'm totally fine. Obviously, I'm gutted, but yeah, it's a bad weekend, isn't it? It's a bad weekend. And then just before you just see Aguero with his Barcelona shirt, just to rub the salt in the wounds.
That does hurt, doesn't it, for you? I don't know. I've had lots of conversations with Micah about Aguero Nedum, and we were on air the night it broke, and it really does hurt Micah, actually. Do you feel the same sadness?
Yeah, I do, because he's been so important for the club. But to be honest as well, like, I'm a Messi guy, I'm a Barcelona guy, so in some ways it still stays within my orbit because I'll be watching them every week now as well. So it's a shame he's not at City, but I'm glad he went there over, say, Real Madrid, who I don't necessarily like as much.
What, are you going to watch him on a chip box, or are you going to where are you going to watch him?
Listen, my friend. If I keep doing these gigs, I'll be able to afford subscriptions for other types of networks. Okay, so for now, I'm feeling good. I think I'll get the chance to see him next year.
Mike has got a subscription to every single TV service in the world.
It's because he's working for him, that's why.
Exactly. Before we drill down into both Chelsea and Manchester City, Rory, and you were there, look, there weren't, it wasn't end-to-end in many ways. There weren't numerous chances, but it was enthralling and it was intense.
It's really hard to judge games that big in terms of how entertaining, in terms for the quality of the football, because whether you're in the stadium or you're watching on TV, you are so engrossed in the fact that it's finally poised and everything's on the line, and one slip, one brilliant ball, whatever, can make the difference between success and failure. It's kind of sport at its best. It's like, the final of a major tennis open. Like, I'm not a massive tennis fan, but you watch it and you think, well, these are two athletes that have worked towards this their whole lives. This means everything. And if you saw Ilkay Gundogan genuinely, like, properly fighting back tears after the final whistle went, if you didn't feel for him on some sort of human level, then you probably shouldn't be watching sport, to be honest. I thought the first half was quite breathless and frantic, and City particularly looked a little bit sort of frenzied, almost a little bit desperate. thirsty, as the kids call it. The second half was much more tactical, and the second half was funny. Because apart from the Pulisic chance, nothing really happened. There wasn't actually a lot of kind of goal mouth action in the second half, but you don't need that in a final because it's 45 minutes from the European Cup. Doesn't matter how good the game is. The situation, the circumstance just means it is utterly compelling. I thought it was one of the better finals we've had in the last 10 years, I guess. It wasn't up there with Barca, Man United in 2011 or Bayern Dortmund 2013, but it was competitive.
Chelsea were... Honestly, I did an article, didn't I?
I would have thought so. I'm surprised you just did the one, to be honest with you, but go on.
I did an article and I was still a little bit sore from the Lampard situation when he left, and I believed he should have a little bit more time. I said I don't know if I was emotional or whatnot, but I said I didn't think Tuchel would have the tools to win anything big with Chelsea, and I wouldn't say it was a throwaway comment, but I just didn't believe. I thought there was teams better equipped to win the Champions League where they were at that time. I thought he had a harder job than he does, and he's proven me so wrong. I mean, what he's done in that short space of time, I think it was the Champions League, his 30th game of the season.
Yeah.
And to win a Champions League final, but not only how many clean sheets they have in the Premier League. And if you look at their back line, people was talking about Thiago Silva maybe, a little bit over it. And then Rudiger, he's coming to the team, he's not really that good. And then Azpilicueta is over the hill now. But they were amazing. And as much as it hurts as a City fan now, it's just... They deserved it from start to finish. Reece James, wing back. I've been talking about Alexander-Arnold all season, but Reece James in that final, in the biggest moment, he turned up. Chilwell, all these players. I can eat humble pie because they definitely deserved it on the night. And City disappointed me. They really did, but I was really impressed with Chelsea, chappers.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about the sort of tactical elements of it overall and stuff. But as you've just said there, in terms of Chelsea, I thought they played really well. But the things in which they did really well was the stuff which is tactically really good as a collective, because you can look at their front three, for example, and I wouldn't say they had the best games I've ever seen, because when you see a Havertz, a Werner, a Mount, you know about their ability levels and the things that they can do. But in that game, that wasn't the main thing itself. But what they did do exceptionally well as a front three, for example, was always make sure the ball went outside of them. They wouldn't let City go through the middle. And where I was sitting in the stadium, you could just see Chelsea in the middle of the field. Like, literally, if you try and go centrally, there's nothing there but a trap and a quick counter-attack. But they did it so well and all the time. And then to talk about, say, the City side of things, I was like you, Mikey, because as everyone knows, you're an obvious City fan and I'm a City fan as well. And if certain individuals would have played well, and the tactics didn't work out, then I'd spend more time talking about tactics. But I think there are probably 4 or 5 players who walked off that field, on Saturday, and that's probably one of their worst games in the whole season.
Yeah, but Nathan, so you know what Chelsea's strengths are, don't you?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're compact, and then the counter-attack. There was an occasion before Chelsea scored their goal where the exact same motion happened before the goal. And I'm just thinking to myself, when Chelsea get compact and just stay in their positions, it's like Man City have to win the game. Everyone's trying to press and whatnot. I understand the tactics from the manager. They want him to press high and whatnot. But Werner, that is his strength, running in behind. And people can laugh at him and have a joke about him, but I backed him all season just because of how hard he works. Playing at centre-back, the last thing you want to do is be running at the back of you. You want everything in front of you. You don't want to be turning and running towards your own goal because you don't feel in control. And Werner does that perfectly. He might not score an awful lot, but what he does for the team is so important.
I was going to say, though, in relation to that, one thing about Chelsea, for as good as they are, I think that they've got a very, very set style of play. When the keeper gets the ball, it's similar to, say, with Mancini, the way you'd ask people to play. He's got the ball, he's going to go to this guy or that guy, who's going to go to this guy or that guy. Or if he's going to play a longer pass, he plays a longer pass to the wing-backs. And I think overall, looking in the first half, City, they had something going on with the back four whereby they would always say, Zinchenko would go and try and get to James, or Walker would go and try and get to Chilwell, and they were moving as a full unit. But for that goal, I think the ball came from the back, and the first big problem I saw was Kyle Walker tried to get there, but he left too late. So as a consequence, he got left in no man's land. But everybody else was trying to come across. But again, they were late as well, as we saw with Zinchenko in his position. So with Kyle Walker, in that instance, he's got the right intent to try and affect it. But as you know yourself, sometimes you just have to leave it. You can't affect it. But unfortunately, he's dragged him out of position, dragged someone else out of position. Before you know it, they clean through on goal.
I just believe when you're on that pitch, you've got to take responsibility. And no matter how the manager wants you to play, you've got to assess that situation.
Yeah,
and I can't blame Kyle Walker in terms of, because that's what he's been told to do. I understand we probably you have to regroup. I know if I was in that position and someone was playing behind me, you say don't go, Meeks, drop, you know what I mean? But it's just the way that they want to play. So in fairness to Kyle Walker, if he flies out there and goes to Chilwell, because Chilwell who had the touch, they should know, the rest of the defence, that's happening, so they should come around straight away. If you look more at the clip, I don't want to get into like the tactical and technical too much, because we can't judge Guardiola, we can't, because at the end of the day, Gundogan's played in that position before, he's played deep. I think in the Lyon game last season when I played free at the back, he was playing one of the deeper midfielders as well. But he's got different qualities to Fernandinho and Rodri. Yeah. So people talk about, yes, they should have played a defensive midfielder. Whether they did or not, the difference was that Rodri and Fernandinho read that danger. They get in a position, so that ball that Mount's going to play forward, he's in that position to stop that. And that is the difference. I don't blame Pep for playing Gundogan in there. I understand why he tried. He wanted to keep the ball and play like a little bit of a quarterback and dictate the play. So he wanted to be able to move the ball quick and whatnot, have someone. But what they did miss, they missed Gundogan running into the box because he was the deepest midfielder. But then they also lost that tactical and defensive nous with not having Rodri and Fernandinho in there.
The one thing that I always notice when I'm watching City live is how often the players turn to the bench for advice. It seems that whenever there's a problem and whenever there's an issue, their first instinct is to turn to Guardiola or to Lilo or whoever and say, right, what do we do about this? I think Mike is totally right that certainly in the first half, there were times when what you thought City needed was just to calm down a little bit, just to keep the ball. They needed kind of 5 minutes without creating anything, without anything happening, just having a chance to rest on the ball and feel their way into a rhythm. My one worry with not just with Guardiola, but with all of the super coaches, is that they have created this environment where they are the people who have all the answers, so you follow orders. And there's not quite enough kind of in these teams where players are prepared to say, actually, do you know what, I've been in this situation before. What we do now is we drop 5 yards. I don't know how much that is something that players are allowed to do now.
I mean, I don't know about you, Rory, but whenever a team wins a Premier League or wins a Champions League, there is a sort of tendency in the media or a cliche in the media to go, is this the start of a new era for that club? Whether it be Liverpool winning the title last year, Bayern Munich winning the Champions League. So, is this the start of a new era for Chelsea?
So the problem I have with it is the Champions League is a culmination. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't, to an extent, matter if it is the start of a new era for Chelsea, because football kind of thrives on... This is one of the things the Super League, I think, got wrong. I think it was one of the misunderstandings of the idea. Football's all about tomorrow. It's not about today. American sports are about today. It's about what happens now on the field. Football fans exist purely in terms of what can today do for us tomorrow. Is this the start of a dynasty? And I think, in a sense, that's a bit of a shame, because whatever happens next, Chelsea have won the Champions League. Who cares what happens next? That's brilliant. As I'm not going to quote Kai Havertz, but I agree with his sentiment. I think Chelsea looked to me from the start that Tuchel came. As soon as Tuchel came in, Chelsea, the difference, the speed of the difference was extraordinary. I think that in time we'll look back on. It's 124 days between his appointment and then winning the Champions League. Yeah. That is one of the all-time great managerial performances, without a shadow of a doubt, even with their resources, even with the fact they spent more money than Germany as a nation last summer. Even the fact that they had this They have probably the second or third deepest squad in Europe. Just the sheer number of players they've got to call on in a really condensed season, that's been a massive advantage. What Tuchel's done is genuinely extraordinary. To name drop horribly, I can do it because Chris isn't here. Ralph Rangnick, my friend, always said that his
hold on. Just because Chris is not here, don't think I'm not going to intervene.
No, you're not. He's the one who kind of adjudicates these things, whether it's too clanging or not. But Mike, right, you're on my side. I don't mind. I don't mind your kind of strawn. Chris's hurts me. Rangnick always says it takes about 6 weeks to turn a team around, and I always thought, no, that's ridiculous. That's kind of too self-promoting. That's too much kind of, I want a job. I can help in 6 weeks. Tuchel did it in about 3 days. It was extraordinary what Tuchel's done. Genuinely extraordinary. And I think it does set them up for next season to be City's primary challengers. My one reservation about Chelsea is that I wonder if they are still a little bit a cup team. I don't know whether the Premier League now, to win it, in a normal season particularly, you need that kind of relentless consistency that comes from scoring a lot of goals. And I don't know whether Chelsea have it or can get it without spending a lot of money on a striker. And that striker, there are 2 of those strikers potentially on the market this summer. One of them may not be, and the other one probably won't be sold to Chelsea. So that would be my one worry. Can Chelsea get the goals in their team to challenge for the Premier League? But as things stand, presuming this isn't a flash in the pan, and there's no reason to think that it is, Chelsea will be a decent bet for the Champions League next season.
Okay, so maybe the question is, because Rory is right, Nedum, everybody fans live in the here and now, because what's the point of worrying about 3 years' time? Mm-hmm. But does Thomas Tuchel change the managerial narrative at Chelsea? 17 permanent and caretaker managers since they won the FA Cup at the turn of the century. So is this the man that could be there for longer than 2 seasons?
To be honest, in some ways you'd like to think so, but the Chelsea model, as we've seen, isn't based around sort of loyalty to managers and giving them time, because ultimately they've had so many managers, as you've said, but they've won a ton of trophies in that time.
Yeah, I think 18.
Exactly. So any sort of significant dip, it might bring a little bit of early outrage, but it tends to bring results further down the line, whether that's a case of, they're outside the top 4, now they're in the top 4, or they're halfway down the league and all of a sudden they win a league the next season and stuff. So I don't know, but he seems like he's created a very, very strong foundation. But if we, as you were kind of alluding to, Rory, if we were to talk about a potential weakness for them, especially in terms of the league, it is that goals thing. And for as good as Chelsea are now and as organised as they are, you can almost predict the questions that we asked in the future if they go on a bad run, because they won't be conceding a ton, but they might not be scoring enough.
I don't know if... I know the stats are all there. Sometimes we look very deep into stats. I know you're a stat man, Rory. Werner's missed at least...
I genuinely don't know if that's true, but go on.
You've not stopped saying XG from the start of the season, honestly. So you're a stat man. And if I think I seen a stat the other day talking about stats, that Werner...
loves a stat, this fella.
Hang on a minute. We talk too much about stats, But
I was talking to a stat man.
Just to prove my point on this, here's a stat.
But if you think about it, look how many chances Werner has missed. Look, just seriously, look how many chances. If he would have scored 6 of them, I think, no, on a serious note, I think there was a stat saying that 13 or 14 of his goals have been ruled out by offside, by handball, or him missing absolute sitters. You change that round. If that's someone else, because I still think Werner can play in this team, even if he's not playing as number 9. I actually like him down in one of the 10s on the left, making them runs. If you bring a Harry Kane or a Haaland, I don't think people will be talking about Chelsea as a defensive-minded team. It's just that when they've been giving them opportunities, a load of them have fell to Werner. A lot of people think, Chelsea are not boring to watch. On the counter-attack, it's exciting. It's actually frightening. I did a tweet a couple of months ago, and they're actually exciting to watch because they go from back to front so quick. It's like, you remember when Liverpool was dominating and they could just go at pace, getting the other side within 6-7 seconds. I see that as Chelsea. So I don't think the boring. Having they get a real top goal scorer, I don't think people then will be talking about them scoring goals.
Let's move on. and reflect on the man who was man of the match on Saturday night. Paul Pogba once said of him, he's the most beloved player in the history of football. You've got to love him. You cannot hate him. It is not possible. He is humble, kind and professional. He will never complain. He will work. Rory, you wrote the following about him after Saturday. At times it felt as if someone had passed him a script. In his own way, he was no less decisive here than Messi in 2009 and 2011 or Ronaldo in 2014. And it is, of course, Kante.
Yeah, and it should go down in history as the Kante final, but it won't, because he's not a winner or a goal scorer or an attacking midfielder. But he was the dominant figure on the pitch. Reece James and Chilwell deserve a lot of love. Reece James in particular was incredible, but Kante in that second half was just, breathtaking to watch. And it's not just he's dressed up. There's two big things with Kante that annoy me. One is that there's an assumption, and I think that it's partly to do with the fact that he's black. There is an assumption that he is about running. He's not. He's about positioning. Kante is, to be honest, he's not quite as quick as he was when he was at Leicester. Kante's reading of the game is absolutely magnificent. And the other is that he's purely defensive, and he's not, because he was leading the counter-attacks. He was the one who was dictating the way that Chelsea counter-attacked. I think ESPN put out a little picture of the great midfield trios, and one was Iniesta, Busquets and Xavi, one was Casemiro, Kroos and Modric, and one was just N'Golo Kante on his own. And he is the most remarkable midfielder we've seen. He's one of the greatest midfielders in history, is Kante, and because he's perceived as being defensive, he doesn't get the credit that he should do for all the rest of his game.
Yep, absolutely agree. And I don't know if this is a frustrating thing, but he's one of those players for the opposition side who you can't hate. It's so hard. Like he plays so well more often than not. He's not a dirty player. He's not complaining to the referees, but he can really dominate in that section of the field. And those type of players there, it's spectacular. I think his CV is growing every single year, but he walks around on the field and looks and in life as if he doesn't have anything to show for himself at all. And that type of humility, given the amount of success he has, is why it seems like why people love him and people can't hate him. And you love that. That's what you want to see. You want to see more of that. And like people, I think we've alluded to this before, thought he is just a defensive player, but his energy and his understanding and his match awareness and his footballing IQ, it's spectacular. It really is spectacular, and it's frustrating, like being in that game in Porto on the weekend. Like I'm hoping City are going to win, but instead I'm just seeing him and a few others just completely dominate in their respective sections, and it's heartbreaking. But then he's got a big smile on his face afterwards. It's like, well, I can't even hate him for that either. It's the worst type of thing.
Is he better than Makalele?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
He's better than Sir Claude. He's better, yeah.
He's more rounded.
Yeah,
he's more rounded player than Makalele.
Yeah, Claude Makalele is top, as we all know. But like as I say, I think Kante when he first came to England, he was trying to play that Makalele role, but now he's doing something which, like realistically, most midfielders in England do not want to match up with him in that midfield there, because he can outrun you, but then tactically he can outthink you as well. And then all with just a big smile on his face and just casually just destroying you for 90 minutes. It's not ideal, is it?
It's his apologies for this, Micah, but his stats are really interesting on how his game has changed over the last 5 or 6 years. If you go back to his Leicester 2015-16 season, he made 175 tackles, 326 recoveries and 156 interceptions, which implies he definitely had a specific role to play in that Leicester midfield. This season with Chelsea, 79 tackles, so 100 less tackles than that Leicester season, 194 recoveries, so 130 less recoveries, and 100 less interceptions as well, 59 compared to that 156. So his game over the years has changed, I suppose, depending on what the demands of his manager is.
Well, there was a little bit of a move that I saw on as I was sort of idly flicking through Twitter at various Portuguese airports on Sunday, to kind of, and I've never seen this before, to suggest that there should be some credit to Frank Lampard for Chelsea winning the Champions League, which I'm pretty sure wouldn't have been the case if the roles were reversed and a foreign manager had been fired.
Well, hold on, Lampard got him into the Champions League, though. You know.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit in the same way as Ron Atkinson deserves a lot of credit for Manchester United winning the treble in 1999. I don't remember.
Come on.
Who got sacked before Di Matteo won it for Chelsea? Was that Ancelotti?
Was that Villas-Boas?
Oh, was it Villas-Boas? Might have been Villas-Boas. Yeah, it was. It was. No one said, well, give Villas-Boas credit for Chelsea winning the Champions League. The one manager actually who still has a little bit of an imprint on this Chelsea team is Sarri, because he brought in Jorginho and Kovacic, and he was the one who said first of all, and it was really criticised, that maybe Kante could play a slightly more advanced role. And I think that's something that Tuchel has incorporated into Kante's game. There is still a little, it's all Tuchel's triumph, don't get me wrong, but there's a little sort of thread of Sarri still in this Chelsea team, I think, and that to me is at least as significant as the role that Frank Lampard played in this glorious triumph.
Yeah, but hold on. That's not fair. Who brought through James? Who give the Chelsea youngsters a chance? Rory?
Yeah, no, you're right. Obviously, but that is not how it works. Come on.
I'm not trying to say that Frank Lampard deserves credit, but what he did get him into the Champions League. So you've mentioned him, Sarri moving Kante a bit forward in position, but Lampard brought through all the youngsters at Chelsea, Mount and James. Give him so come on. If you're going to mention the Sarri, it's equal for Mount. Mount in the game was outstanding, and so was James.
He had a role to play in the development, obviously, yeah. He did contribute to their personal development.
This is what I mean.
If Lampard had been in charge, Chelsea would not have won the European Cup.
Okay, that's but you're talking about giving credit to Sarri for making Kante play a little bit more advanced. So I'm saying, well, Lampard brought through the youngsters, James.
Yeah, and he got them into the Champions League.
And Mount, and he got him into Champions League. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying he deserves any credit.
But of course, every single victory from a team, especially a team that changes managers often as Chelsea, there's going to be little bits of influence from all of the previous managers, of course. So I think, it struck me that it's interesting that Lampard is the one being, let's remember Frank Lampard's role in this. No one's saying, let's remember Maurizio Sarri's role in this. Maybe we should be. Let's give credit to them both. And let's give credit to Andre Villas-Boas at the same time.
Give credit to me for winning the league because I was there 10 years ago.
But you played an inspirational part in their success this season, Micah, obviously.
Let's talk Wales then. Their squad for the Euros was announced late last night. Dave Edwards is with us, part of the squad who reached the semi-finals in France in 2016. And Dave, all the attention already on the inclusion of Ruben Colwill.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me on, lads. But Ruben Colwill is a little bit of an unknown. He's only sort of played a few games for Cardiff this season, 19. And when he was put in that preliminary squad to go out to Portugal, I think it was more just to get experience, everyone thought. But he must have done some really good work on the training pitch. By listening to Robert Page, he sounds like he's really impressed him during that week, and he's obviously done enough to get into the squad, which is amazing for him. But unfortunately, there's going to be a few lads who missed out because of it.
Have you heard from other players what he's done to impress?
No, only from what Robert Page has said, and I know he's very versatile. And to come through at Cardiff under Mick McCarthy, you're going to have to be ready. So I played under Mick before, and I know that he wouldn't give players that experience if he didn't think they were ready. So he's obviously ready for the Championship. But Robert Page says his versatility, he can play all across midfield, whether it be in the middle as a 10 or out wide. I just think that young enthusiasm as well, it'll give Wales a real sort of extra buzz going into those opening games. But I do feel a little bit disappointed for, in particular, Tom Lawrence, who misses out after missing out in 2016 with an injury. I'm sure he would have expected to be on that plane, but it's great for Ruben and his family.
Colwill's just 19, only made his Cardiff debut in February, 191 minutes of senior football. I mean, I don't know what it sounds like to you, Micah, but it sounds to me like he's bursting onto the scene.
There's nothing wrong with a burst. Stop hating on the burst. The young lad deserves a chance. And like Dave said, sometimes they're the best players to have because they're fearless. You remember when Rooney first, he was the real burst on the scene when he was at the Euros, and he just was ridiculous. And I'm not comparing to Rooney, but in terms of sometimes a young player can just be fearless. So the manager's obviously seen something that he really likes. So why not? I'm all for young players getting a chance.
Dave, how many minutes do you think he's going to play in the tournament?
Hand on heart?
Yes.
0. So, I'd be very surprised. They don't mix the team up too much, Wales. They never have done. If all their big players are fit, they will play. But maybe if they need something in the game, he is a bit of an unknown. He's not something that any other the nations would have been able to do much scouting on or anything like that. And like Mika said, that fearless, that lucky thing you get when you're younger, where you just think you can take on the world with no pressure, and that might just be a little bit of hidden treasure for Robert Page come late on in a game when they need something to happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. But then I also wonder sometimes the other side of that coin is, does it end up being like how Theo Walcott was when he got called up to the England squad all that time ago? So like he was there and he was a prospect, but he wasn't used, and it almost felt as if the manager at the time, I think was it Sven maybe, he was never really going to use him. So then, as was the case you've mentioned there with Tom Lawrence, like I know Tom Lawrence as well, and he will be incredibly disappointed, especially if you're talking about somebody there who might not get any game time at all. But it definitely feels like, it's a positive and exciting thing to have that type of energy in there in a high pressure situation. That innocence could be great, you know what I mean? But then in the same breath, as I say, you do wonder what the value is if he's potentially not going to play.
Dave, do you think that it's Tom Lawrence's place that he's taken? Would he have been number 27?
It would have been between Tom Lawrence and Rabbi Matondo. And Rabbi Matondo would be disappointed as well, because ever since Ryan Giggs has took over, I'd say Rabbi's been in every single squad. He hasn't done overly well in a Wales shirt, if I'm being brutally honest, but he would have definitely thought he was on the plane as well, I imagine. But Tom Lawrence is the one with his experience, and say Naden knows how much of a good player he is. Yep. And he's another person who can get you something out of nowhere. He's got an unbelievable strike on him. He can score from distance. So me personally, I'm very surprised it wasn't Tom Lawrence who was in the squad. And I just hope they haven't put too much pressure on Ruben Colwill as well. You talk about Theo Walcott. That happened when he come back from the World Cup. All this pressure was on him, and that will be on Ruben Colwill next year now.
What are the chances, do you think, for Wales in this competition? Realistic chances, because they've done well. They got to the semi-finals against Belgium, and they had Ashley Williams at the back, who was a great leader for them. What are the expectations for Wales?
I don't think there's huge expectations, but I do think there'll be a belief that they can get out of the group. And that was probably what it was like for us last time. We thought if we can get out of the group, that's a huge success, and anything else is a bonus. I do think Wales has, this time around, compared to 2016, has got a better depth of squad. They've got more players playing at a higher level. But at the same time, I don't think the key players are at the pinnacle of their game like they were in 2016. The likes of Bale, Ramsey, Joe Allen, those three players in particular, especially going forward, they were the players where we could just stay in the game, be defensively solid, work our socks off, because we knew we had match winners in the team. And even though Gareth Bale is still a world superstar, he's not that same player. Same with Aaron Ramsey, he hasn't had a run of games. Joe Allen's the same, he hasn't played much football this year. So I don't think they're as strong as last year on that front. But I fully expect them to be able to get out of the group.
The funny thing is that is indisputable. Obviously, Bale and Ramsey are coming down from really kind of massive heights. They're not quite what they were in 2016. But the fact they've not played that much is a massive advantage, because the defining thing of this tournament is going to be that everyone is absolutely knackered. And so if I was Gareth Bale and I was like 75% of Gareth Bale in 2016, I'd be thinking, do you know what? I'd quite fancy running a group of kind of Italian, Turkish and Swiss defenders who can barely breathe, like who are just exhausted after the season they've had, who've been playing every 3 days since September. I'd be thinking, I'm probably going to be quite good in this situation. And you do wonder whether the fact that they've both lost a little bit. Ramsey's been in and out at Juve. Bale, obviously. I think Bale's got Bale has got the best
XG
goals per minute ratio of any player.
Who's giving that stat? You couldn't.
Come on, that's an easy one to understand. Goals per minute. Number of goals you score for every minute you're on the pitch. Bale's is the best in Premier League.
Best in the Premier League.
So why didn't you just say goal, like he scored X amount of goals in X amount of games? That's what people are used to. But you want to go all modern with
because the correct way to say it is goals per minute. But you wonder whether that might be an advantage for them. If Bale can catch defences cold, then that makes Wales a real threat.
Yeah, I think that's right for Bale. It's almost like his move to Spurs has all been to get himself ready for this Euros, and he was frustrated at the start of the season, but he's just built up nicely, and you could see at the end of the season he had his sharpness back. He was able to go past players. So I think that's definitely obvious for Bale, but I think Ramsey hasn't played enough football this year. And if you haven't played enough football, same with Joe Allen, when you haven't played enough football, it does take you a while to sort of get back into your groove. So I think Gareth Bale is there, but the other two, I think, still needed more games this year.
But there are a few others there, aren't there? Dave, no, it's not just Bale and Ramsey, and you mentioned Joe Allen. You could throw Dan James in there. You could throw Ben Davies in there as well, couldn't you? Joe Rodon had a spell at Tottenham where he was in the side. But there are a few, actually, who haven't had maybe the football that they would have hoped for this season.
No, and Dan James, he's been Wales' best player, undoubtedly, over the last sort of 2 years, consistently putting in performance after performance. End product is getting better and better from being at Manchester United, and he scored some vital goals for Wales. But they do have some attacking luxuries as well. They've got the likes of Harry Wilson, David Brooks, Johnny Williams, all players who are going to be wanting to start the Euros. But there's obviously only so many players in that starting 11. So Wales have got a lot of firepower. A lot of people who are on form at the moment as well. And David Brooks is another one who hasn't played a lot of football, but has played more towards the end of the season. And he is a super talent, David Brooks. So Wales have got a lot of depth in those four positions. And like you said, they wouldn't have played the same amount of football as what the England boys have and what the Italian lads have and things like that. So it will be a massive benefit to them.
And just a final one to all three of the footballers here, which is, I know you talk about Colwill and he might be nerveless and enthusiasm of youth and so on and so forth, but he's still walking into a changing room where, he's at 19, there's every chance he probably had Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey posters up on his wall when he was younger, in the same way that Phil Foden had some of his Manchester City teammates on his wall, and he was slowly introduced, as we talked about at the weekend, Nedham, into that Manchester City squad to get used to being around these players. You can't tell me, all three of you, when you first started out, whoever the big player was in your dressing room at that time, that there weren't a few nerves at the start, surely. Dave?
There was definitely nerves for me. I think the Wales dressing room is a lot more forgiving than the Wales dressing room I walked into, with the likes of Craig Bellamy in there. Bellas has this aura about him that if you mess up in training, that is terrifying. One of the best pros you'll ever see. Mika, you'd have played with him. He's unbelievable professional. But if he was on his team in a five-a-side, you were terrified from the outset. So I know the Welsh lads, the likes of Gaz and Aaron Ramsey, and that they are such down-to-earth lads, and they'll make anyone feel welcome. But there will be nerves, but those lads will help him, definitely.
To talk about Bellas, Mike, I think it was when you were in America 2011 on your pre-season tour. Well, me and Bellas, we were with the 16s, if you remember, and it was.
Why would I remember that? I wasn't there.
Well, I thought you cared about me. I thought we were friends. I thought you'd be concerned we weren't on the same continent, even though we played for the same team. But I guess not. But it was day one of pre-season, minute one. Bellas walks out. And there's a kid who did something like a little trick or whatever just nearby, and Bellas turned to him and he just started hammering him. And this kid was looking at him so confused, like, is he being serious or is he not? But he literally scared this kid. It was after 30 seconds of the first training session of pre-season, and the kid was never the same again. But in terms of like going into a dressing room, I think it comes down to the kid's personality. If he's going to be someone who tries to be overly familiar, then maybe people won't be as welcoming. But I think overall, if you've got a dressing room full of good people, they'll try and make you feel welcome. And ultimately, you can't help but be judged based on how you play. But if he's been selected on merit, then if he's good enough, I think he'll fit in. And that's ultimately the biggest thing, isn't it?
Right, we will move on. By the way, Micah, just one final thing on Wales. When Ashley Williams did that match of the day 2 with me, and you sent me the picture of him about to chin you when Swansea played Villa, were you telling him he was a great leader then? Was that what you were doing?
No, I wasn't. To be fair, chappers, I wasn't. But I settled the differences. We was doing something down in London, because he's going to be a pundit for the Euros, isn't he, for Wales. And I just said to him, you're horrible on the pitch, but off the pitch, you're actually all right. So we made a truce.
Micah,
we made a truce.
Is it not important to remind people why Ashley Williams wanted to chin you?
Well, no, we don't need to go there, because we're not promoting violence on here, are we, Rory?
No, we're not.
That's true, yes.
Dave, thank you very much for coming on. Hopefully we'll talk during the Euros. Thank you. We're going to talk Brentford now, who are into the top flight for the first time in 74 years, and they'll actually become the 50th different club to play in the Premier League. Director of Football there, Rasmus Ankersen, joins on the Monday Night Club. Evening, Rasmus.
Good evening.
The photo you tweeted yesterday of you lying on the turf in the sunshine at your new ground with the playoff trophy next to you and the line, one of the better days at the office. As you lay there looking up into the sky, what were you thinking?
I was thinking that it was actually one of the better days at the office. No, I mean, it was, I think, a lot of things came together for us, obviously with the new ground that we've not been able to have fans in for the last year. And we missed out just on promotion last season when it was actually ready. And then we are here 12 months later and we're in the Premier League and fingers crossed we will have fans back for the first game of the new season.
Did you feel relief?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's something that we've been working so hard to achieve over the past 6-7 years, and it's kind of a group of staff that's worked together for a long time, and missing out last season, not just in the final, but when we had the opportunity in the last 2 games of the season to finish top 2, and we missed out, then it was obviously a huge disappointment. So in some ways, it feels actually better that we've bounced back from that and was able to do it this time around.
Hey, Rasmus, it's Nadem here. Firstly, congratulations on promotion. Hey, it feels like it's been long overdue. And my question to you is, going into this next season then, with a different sort of task, is the plan to keep everything as it is right now, or do you think they will need to change to be competitive at that level?
I think we need to stay true to what has made Brentford. I mean, we've come this far because we had, courage to take some risks and to do things in a slightly different ways in some parts of the operation, and we're definitely gonna continue to do that. I think we have. It's important that we go into the Premier League with the mindset of, being ambitious and not just to avoid relegation. I mean, I think one of the principles we've always tried to follow is that we want to recruit and act on the basis of where we want to go, not where we are. And I think, that's the mindset we got to take with us into the Premier League, that we need to be ambitious and we need to try and aim and act and recruit for where we want to go again now, and not just feel that we kind of arrived to the final destination because we haven't.
Rasmus, it's Rory. I'm going to ask you a question that's going to annoy Micah, and I'm going to ask it partly because it's going to annoy Micah. The data obviously is central to what Brentford and Michelin do. That's one of the kind of the risks that you've taken, one of the ways that you've tried to do things differently. When you're recruiting for the Premier League, are the things that you're looking for, which are the things that are different that you're looking for to the things that you were looking for in the Championship? How does that sort of progression of the division change the actual kind of strengths you need in your players, or is it just a case that you can look for players with the same traits but maybe to a higher level?
I think one mistake people tend to make when they look at is that they tend to look at the leagues in kind of sequences. So you got the Premier League and the Championship and League One and so on. But the way we always try to look at it, especially in recruitment, has been that what if all teams basically played in the same league? What would the table look like? And then you realize that, using data, you can see that the big difference in English football is not really between like the bottom teams of the Premier League and the top teams of the Championships. I mean, I think that even the difference between the top teams of League One and the bottom teams of the Premier League are not that big. The big difference is really from number 7 to number 8 in the Premier League. So I don't think we see it as if we are going into a completely different world where the requirements and demands are completely different than what we're used to. But that said, I think that if you are going to compete at the highest level, and I saw that myself when Midtjylland was in the Champions League this season, is something I really took notice of, is that you need to have a lot of athleticism in your team. I think in modern football, if you don't have athleticism, then that's almost like the access ticket to the game. Then you get destroyed by the best teams. So that's something I think we need to take into account. But other than that, I'm not sure we're gonna look for something completely different now we go into the Premier League.
When Dean Smith moved on and Thomas Frank was promoted from within the club into the role of head coach, what did you see in Frank at that time to do what he has done?
He was Danish, That's an important criteria at Brentford, as you can see. No, I mean, joking aside, I mean, Thomas. I know Thomas for also quite a lot of years before he went to Brentford, and we brought him in because we thought he was offering something different to our coaching staff when Dean and when Richard were there as well, and we always had this idea that Thomas could develop into a head coach one day. We didn't give him any guarantees or promise him anything, but we think he had the potential. And when then Dean left to Villa, I mean, we did a process. We actually interviewed other candidates. We always do that, but we felt that there's a lot of good things that come out of recruiting from within, and I think Thomas has really done well. And we didn't need like 6 months to start to get to know each other, and we already had a common understanding of what we wanted to achieve and what our strategy was. And I think that helped, even though he had a very tough spell to begin with.
Rasmus, thank you very much for coming on. Congratulations on a phenomenal achievement, and I'm sure we will talk at some point next season as well. Thank you very much, Rasmus.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you
very much.
Rasmus Ankersen, sporting director, football director at Brentford. And they've gone up, Nedum, as well. You look at their net spend and the players that they have sold over just the last 3 years, and they are in profit. They sold 3 years ago Chris Mepham and Ryan Woods. That brought in 20 million. Mope and Konza the following year, 32 million. Lassama, Watkins and Ben Rama in total brought in 63 million. And yet they've gone up.
Yeah, but it's the model. If the players leave, the model still remains, and they look for that type of talent again. And it is really, really interesting, like, to skip past that a little bit and to go into next season. We do have our beliefs that there's a certain type of player which is required to play in the Premier League, and maybe their model goes against what we traditionally believe in. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can do it next season and be successful, but then more so if they can do it the year after, because I think we looked at the last 2 years with Sheffield United, and for as great as they looked in year one, in year two, it seemed like they just hit the buffers completely. So fair play to them. They've managed to keep hold of some players, but obviously they've sold some as well and brought in some real significant money. And it is very, very interesting because, every year that goes by with them, you're always interested to see how they do, because they are doing it in such a different manner. Whether or not other teams and stuff will buy into it, I'm not sure, but it's definitely going to be something which we're speaking about a lot more next season.
I think what he said about the fact that the big gap is not Premier League to Championship, it's from 7th to 8th in the Premier League, is fascinating. And probably that kind of feels true, that there's a lot of teams in the Championship you look at and think, do you know what, you could probably finish 17th in the Premier League. You couldn't finish 7th, but you might be able to finish 17th. And I think we overestimate how big the gap is between the leagues and how small the gap is within the leagues. I think that's really interesting. They've got data that suggests that's true.
No, come on. The gap is massive. Come on, let's not sugarcoat things. They've done well, and them getting to the Premier League.
What gap's massive, Mike?
Well, at one stage, he said the gap from like the bottom of the Premier League is like going down to League One. I think he said something like
top of League One. Yeah,
top of League One.
Yeah, top of League One. Which is nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. I mean, the guy was a nice guy. The model that he's done has been brilliant. But come on, the guy. I think in the Championship, they can be more resilient. They're playing Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, so they are really fit. But the quality. When I went down to the Championship and I seen some of the teams in the I couldn't believe no one plays football. No one. It was just survival of the fittest. So then to suggest that, the top of League One is the same
teams do play football in the Championship.
Yeah, but it's come on. Are we really having this this discussion that the top of League One is not that different from the bottom of the Premier League.
There's a reason why certain clubs yo-yo. It feels like there's a thing where there are probably 6 or 7 teams who are trapped sort of between the Premier League and the top of the Championship, a la Fulham, as we see at this moment in time.
Right, that is the final Monday Night Club of this season. Nedum, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. More next season, please.
Great to have you. More next season. I hope Chris isn't listening, otherwise that will worry him.
I hope he's listening.
Rory, thank you. Micah, enjoy all your commercial activities over the summer.
The Football Daily from BBC Sport and BBC 5 Live.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Brought to you by the Capital One Venture Card. With Venture, you earn unlimited double miles on every purchase, every day. And you can use those miles toward travel expenses like flights, hotels, rental cars, and more. Just book and pay for your travel using your Venture Card and redeem your miles toward the cost. Capital One. What's in your wallet? Credit approval required. Capital One Bank, USA, N.A.,